You cheeky bastard. Now you know how powerful I really am.
Be water, my friend.
Kiss my Converse.
On guard. I'll let you try my Wu-Tang style.
You don't even know the basic technique of Kung Fu.
Lone Wolf and Cub.
When it comes to Kung Fu movies, audiences are typically used to seeing either strong stories that are consistently good in both their storytelling and execution, weaker movies that contain excessive amounts of comedy and nonsense, or movies that are somewhat in between those two extremes in terms of having good qualities and areas that need improvement. But now, we here at Lone Wolf and Cub have decided to break down a flick that has repeatedly stumped us in terms of where it falls on that Kung Fu movie spectrum. And that film is none other than The Buddha Assassinator. So let's get into it. The Buddha Assassinator, which was also known as Buddha Killer or Shogun Massacre, is a 1980 martial arts film starring Korean kicking legend Hwang Jang Lee, as well as Mang Hoi, an amazing supporting actor in his own right, and Chin Yut-sang, an awesome talent who helped with the stunt work for Hwang Jang Lee's Hitman in the Hand of Buddha. While it can be said that their strengths varied from each other, it's undeniable that all three of these men brought their respective A-games to this movie. The plot for this movie is fairly simple, though there's some interesting twists and turns. The prince, played by Hwang Jang Lee, is a cruel Qing lord who practices the Lohan fist and hunts down those who wield the Buddha fist, its opposite, simply because he believes there's not enough room for both of them to exist. Both of these styles were formerly taught by the same Kung Fu teacher, but while practitioners of the Buddha fist remained humble and sought to live in peace, users of the Lohan style wanted to consolidate their power, so they ended up joining the Qing regime in order to wipe out the Buddha style faction and remove any competitors that had the potential to beat them. Between the Lohan fist growing in their influence and the Qing attempting to kill off the rest of the Buddha fist clan, rebels have since organized a group that plans to assassinate the Qing prince while he goes to the temple to pray in celebration after his son is born. Enter our unlikely hero, Xiao Hai, played by Mang Hoi, who initially starts out as a victim of bullying by the monks at the Shaolin Temple. However, after shouting out loud to warn the prince about an assassin who tried to kill him, the rebels' plan has been foiled, and the prince ends up indebted to Xiao Hai for saving his life. Once Xiao Hai is rewarded by the prince and taken under his wing, the movie then proceeds to go back and forth between 5 major plot points. 1. Xiao Hai trying to get ahead with his newfound status. 2. Xiao Hai's beggar uncle, San Lu, played by Chin Yut-sang, using his nephew's close connection with the Qing prince to find out about his Lohan-style kung fu. 3. The rebels attempting to reorganize after their failed attempt on the prince's life. 4. The prince's servants plotting to seek revenge on Xiao Hai for how he's been treating them after gaining the prince's favor. And lastly, 5. The prince using Xiao Hai to learn about San Lu, who was a former Buddha fist monk that the prince himself has been longing to kill. Admittedly, Buddha Assassinator juggles a lot for audiences to keep track of story-wise, but after having watched it, I feel like there's a lot to unpack with this movie regarding things that it does well in, as well as certain choices that it should have done better with. So let's go over them. The pros. For one, the kung fu choreography that we get in Buddha Assassinator is pretty strong. The opening alone serves as a really encouraging appetizer for the type of fighting we'd expect to see throughout the film, and when the action finally kicks into high gear, it lives up to the expectations that were set by having Xiao Hai go all out in the latter half of the movie, as well as having both San Lu and the Qing prince demonstrate incredible skill and dedication to their craft. Plus, the prince's servants aren't slouches, as they put in entertaining work with their spears and polearm weapons. As another pro, I feel like this film does a good job at helping us sympathize with our hero, Xiao Hai. For a lead protagonist, he really goes through a lot between being picked on by other monks at the temple, getting set up to take multiple beatings by one of the prince's servants, losing one of his only family members after a tragic accident that occurs during the plot to kill the prince, and just being generally left in the dark about the greater conflict with the Qing that's been happening without him realizing. Chin Yut-sang's performance as San Lu was good due to how dynamic he was. With San Lu being a former Buddha fist monk himself, Chin did an awesome job at portraying how the beggar could go from being the fun, happy-go-lucky uncle to a dead serious sage who prefers peace but is prepared for war when the stakes ramp up. Lastly, Hwang Jang Lee kills it as the Qing's current prince. He displays a wide range of characteristics in his villainy, between his politeness towards both friend and foe, his perceptiveness during calmer situations, and the raw ferocity he gets to unleash whenever he gets a chance to use the low-hand fist to its fullest extent. The cons. Despite how sympathetic I said Mang Hoi's Xiao Hai is, he also makes one too many mistakes for my liking in terms of thinking before he acts. While I can appreciate the eventual evolution of his character, and even though I get that the story has to progress somehow, this change feels like it comes almost a bit too late since, for the majority of Buddha Assassinator's runtime, Xiao Hai blurts out things that he shouldn't have more than once, gets too full of himself after the prince gives him a status boost, which results in those beatings I mentioned earlier, and even accidentally kills someone he shouldn't have. Granted, he's not the only one to blame. I also wasn't a fan of how neither Xiao Hai's aunt nor his uncle tried to explain the overall deal with the Qing prince to him until things already spiraled out of control. I've never been a fan of the trope where a character deliberately keeps a secret until after that info would have been useful, and their committal to that trope here is kind of frustrating since a sooner explanation could have prevented Xiao Hai from killing the person that he did, as well as from accidentally giving away anything to the prince and his servants about his family's plans to 1. Reject the Qing's oppressive rule, and 2. Find out about the low-hand fist that the prince uses. Speaking of which, another con I had was how San Lu's plan to learn about the low-hand fist proved to be kind of pointless. I get that his goal was to have his nephew infiltrate through his connection with the prince after saving his life, but what made him think that Xiao Hai could fully give away how the prince used the low-hand fist when Xiao Hai himself is barely a novice? Plus, this plan of San Lu's was given away by Xiao Hai directly telling the prince who taught him certain Buddha fist moves that he learned later on. So even if he was trying to avoid direct conflict in order to find out the prince's style, Xiao Hai giving the beggar away after the prince asked about who taught him those moves made this whole scheme of his fall apart. I just didn't get how that was supposed to accomplish anything, and doubly so since San Lu ended up confronting the prince anyway. Lastly, regarding the actual fighting that happens throughout the movie, I found Buddha Assassinator to be lacking in the amount spread throughout the film. Even though there are several brawls and a few training sessions that happen over the course of the movie, after the opening showcase between the Buddha fist and the low-hand fist, the first real fight scene between two people doesn't really kick in until 50 minutes later. And while the fighting from that point on until the end was awesome, it felt to me like Buddha Assassinator took a bit too long to step on the gas. With all of that said, even though the cons outnumbered the pros for me this time, I still had a decent experience while watching it, and I would recommend watching this film to anyone who's looking for a fun classic. That is, even if it's not among the heavy hitters of kung fu movies out there. Overall, I'd give Buddha Assassinator a 6.5 out of 10. Well, that's all for now. If you've seen this movie, tell us what you thought about it. Would you give it a higher or lower rating after seeing what it has to offer? And if you haven't seen it yet, are you interested in it? Whatever your thoughts are, comment below and let us know. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is DK from Lone Wolf and Cub signing off. Peace.